Since I was a teenager, I've always been attracted to so-called traditional societies, and then to developing countries. When I was 25, I'd already visited 25 countries, nearly half of which were third world countries. I'd made several trips here to Mentirano, and I liked the place more and more. I knew the people better and better, and also the islands, which I love. From my first visits to Mentirano, and more particularly to the islands here, I soon realized there was a problem with the consumption and sale of sea turtles. At the time when the project came along, there were about 10 turtle butchers in town, and consumption of turtle meat was an everyday thing.
It's 5 a.m. The sun will soon come up over Mentirano, a small fishing town on the west coast of Madagascar. Géraud Leroux and his crew of Malagasy fishermen are getting ready for another scientific expedition to the archipelago of the Barren Isles. Since 2006, Géraud, supported by his wife Lola, has been carrying out a program of research and conservation on sea turtles and also on the Vezo people, to whom he's particularly attached.
My wife is from a Vezo family, originally from the fishing village of Pasmandur here in Mentirano. Vezo etymologically means the people who roam. So that says it all. Even the name of the ethnic group talks about their fishing-related activity.
The Barren Isles archipelago is made up of about 10 small islands off the coast of Madagascar. Between March and December, the Vezo people, one of the last semi-nomadic coastal populations, settle for several months on these islands, where there's neither drinking water or electricity. As part of his research project, Géraud is going to the island of Nosimantal to join these fishing families. After 3 hours on a rough sea, Géraud and his crew finally arrive on the island.
I feel a bit like the naturalists with the first explorers here. For a start, we're in virgin territory, and I've always tried to view the issues from a global perspective. And actually, that's also why the project is called Interdisciplinary Network for Sustainable Management of Marine Biodiversity. I have to say, there's plenty to do, whether we're talking about sharks, sea cucumbers, or whales. So why turtles? Because they're sort of the emblem for endangered marine species. There are a lot of islands across the world where turtles have more or less died out. And at one time, a few decades ago, we had reached a critical threshold.
Géraud chose the Barren Isles archipelago because it's a favourite place for turtles, who go there to feed and to lay their eggs. To collect his research data, he has to catch the turtles and bring them back to the beach. This particular fishing, methodical and very physical, is carried out using traditional dugout canoes only. Géraud therefore recruited former turtle fishermen. Deuk, Philly, Mendra and Naud have shared the adventure with him from the very beginning. Naud has been visiting the Barren Isles since the 1960s. Before going to sea, he takes care to make offerings to the spirits in order to gain their protection.
He comes to ask for the mercy of the island spirits, so that the fishing is good, the weather is clement, and there are no accidents. Usually in the Malagasy populations, they make these incantations with rum. But here on the islands, we only offer sugary, sweet things. It's to placate the spirits. You mustn't give them rum or hot things because that would stir them up.
Once the camp is set up, the crew is ready to go back out to sea.
3 of the 4 men in the crew are Vezo, so they did the same as the people here, and they fished for turtles too. Obviously, the technique itself was well established before I arrived. It's really the typical Vezo technique for turtle fishing. The captures depend on the island we go to. Nosimental, where we are, is usually the place where we catch the most turtles.
The green turtle, one of the 5 species of turtle which visit the Barren Isles archipelago, suffers from fibropapillomas, a virus which can be fatal. One of the aims of the captures is to check on the health of the turtle populations in the area.
We catch them at high tide when the turtles come to feed on the reefs surrounding the islands. The first task is observation, because we have to spot the turtles. You've seen sailors watching the sea trying to spot turtles. Then we spread the net outside of the reef, but always in water that's 3 to 5 meters deep at the most. We make a noise by hitting the canoe when we're on the inside of the reef, so towards the island. But then the turtles will get scared and leave the reef, and they get caught in the net.
The fishermen quickly have to remove the turtles from the nets. The operation is not without danger, since the current could push the boat onto the nearby rocks. Not to mention that the divers could get caught in the nets or hit by the boat's propeller.
Safety here is one of the main concerns, because there's no coast guard, no means of communication. You can imagine that if anything ever happened, the nearest hospital is a long way away.
After 3 hours of fishing on the edge of the coral reef, the fishermen come in just before nightfall.
This is a good catch. Most of them are small, but it's still a good catch. It's not every day we catch 10 turtles in one trip. We put them on their backs like this because it's the only way to stop them struggling, and we can keep them all quiet while we process them all. This is really the island where we catch the most turtles. Strangely, it's an island where the turtles don't lay eggs. I don't know if it's the texture of the sand or what, but it's the island where we find the most turtles. They probably feed on the collections of plants around here. Among these turtles they've caught today, several of them have fibropapillomas.
Audrey Campillo joined Géraud Leroux's team in 2008. Fascinated by sea turtles since she was a young child, the biologist is carrying out research into fibropapillomas, a virus which causes tumours to grow on the soft parts of the turtles.
I photographed the eyes of each turtle that's caught because there was a study carried out in Florida which showed that by studying the colour of the eyes, it's possible to see whether the turtles have already had the disease. So if the conjunctivitis has already healed, or if they're soon going to get it, there's a white band at the edge of the eye.
At an advanced stage of the disease, swellings can be observed around the eyes, which considerably reduce the turtle's field of vision. Once they become weak, they'll be caught more easily in nets or by predators. Since the beginning of his research, Géraud has noted that around 25% of the turtles captured are infected with the disease.
Some of the first captures made in Géraud's study showed that in certain turtles the disease had disappeared. They were caught in the beginning with tumours and later they disappeared. On the other hand, other turtles which were without disease were caught again after 6 months with an advanced stage of fibropapillomas. So in some turtles the disease regresses, but in others it advances quickly, and that's worrying.
Fibropapillomas are caused by a virus. It appeared in Hawaii and Florida in the 1940s. Industrial pollution has often been identified as a vector for transmission of the disease. In my opinion, we can eliminate that theory here, because it's not the case here in the Barren Islands.
I'm measuring the straight length, actually the average straight length, as I'm measuring between the supracaudals.
The team hurries, as the turtles must be returned to the sea as quickly as possible. The data collected since the beginning of the project is used not only to assess the number of turtles with disease, but also to determine whether they're limited to a particular geographic area. Even though turtles do have a respiratory system that's adapted to life on land, they spend the majority of their time in the water. The green turtle, for example, can hold its breath for 3 hours.
Generally, we release them one at a time. As soon as one's ready, we let it go.
Turtles have an extraordinary sense of direction. Researchers believe that they could be sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field, which they use to return to lay their eggs at the exact spot where they were born.
There's also a hypothesis that once they've been captured and released, they'll leave that place. But that's certainly not true, because we recapture them sometimes. We've even recaptured some the very next day, so they've stayed very close by. It's funny sometimes to watch the reaction of the fishermen who watch us bring the turtles out and then put them back in the water. We can hear them saying, "That's a nice big one," as if they'd really like to eat it. Clearly, the turtle populations here are declining. Unfortunately, there's still a lot, but things haven't quite clicked at local level. But you can ask Node and the older people here. Back in the day, there used to be 10, 15, 20 turtles laying eggs on a little island in one night, whereas now there are that many in a month, and that's the peak of laying. We've organized a lot of information and discussion workshops. We've organized informal campaigns to raise awareness on the islands, in the fishing villages. But unfortunately, it's an activity which is really rooted in tradition, and it's very difficult to stop.
Okay, isn't the sun out yet?
The next morning at daybreak, the wind is blowing on the island of Nosimantal. In spite of the difficult sea conditions, Géraud's crew decides to go to sea, in the hope of making as good a catch as yesterday. Other Vezo fishermen go out too, looking for sharks, sea cucumbers, and sometimes turtles, which they'll sell later in the town.
Traditionally, the Vezo people weren't allowed to sell turtles. They were eaten in the family setting. So that would be the advantage of reviving those traditions. That's what I've tried to do with these awareness-raising campaigns, so that we try to get back to that point. If they're eaten occasionally, I don't think that poses a great danger to the species. But if they're sold, that's where the problem lies. Turtle fishing is relatively profitable. That's why, unfortunately, it's hard to eliminate and to manage.
Although sea turtles have been protected in Madagascar since 1923, they're under significant pressure from fishing. In spite of the awareness campaigns, the lack of resources given to the protection of ecosystems means that the consumption of eggs and turtle meat is still rising.
Given that with natural predation only one individual in 1,000 reaches sexual maturity, you can imagine the additional damage caused by human intervention in the evolution of the population.